So at Johnny Nitro Studios, we worked on building this set for WonderCon. It was for the promotion of the Ridley Scott Modville set and graphic novel. We partnered with Mechanical Cake that funded most of this, and what we did was we went through and just, instead of creating the standard user exhibit display, what we did was we put in a lot more effort and time and constructed a full movie set that people could interact with, and it was a huge success. So I just wanted to go over some of the processes that we did and kind of explain our involvement in the project itself. So we first started out with some design ideas from Mechanical Cake. They did some renderings for us. I don't remember what, I think it was SketchUp that they used, maybe. It doesn't really matter, but any 3D program that allows us to spin the model around and look at it from different angles. And at this point, they were still trying to configure the details of the layout itself, where the sign would be, how tall it would be. There was limitations at the exhibit hall, for WonderCon or Comic Con. They always have certain limitations to the scale for your exhibit. So you can see some of the measurements in here is 20 feet wide, 14 feet tall, and 10 feet in depth. So that was our basic scale, so that we would kind of conform everything to fit within that kind of imaginary box. So we looked at a couple of things like that. Then they decided to, Mechanical Cake wanted to drop the name into the headline, kind of bar. So this outer bar then becomes kind of a holder for the name. They got rid of the little ice cream character, the cupcake, and ended up making a statue of that anyway. But anyway, you can see a bunch of just notes and stuff taken over phone calls and emails and such, what they wanted to add, how they wanted it to look, were there details missing, all this other kind of stuff. The typical brainstorming session, basically. And so we had to build a whole set and then paint it. And the idea was that we can get the name in the middle of those kind of roof lines, which are metallic. Then it looks more solid instead of the name kind of floating up on top. It looked a little bit more fragile. I guess in the end, it didn't really matter to me, but that's what they want to do, is bring that down lower. This was just a basic rendering of their idea of what the lettering would look like. It would be metallic, and the cake would actually be in neon lettering. So then did a few of these other renderings. I took SketchUp and looked at it more closely now that we had a new kind of layout for the way the design was going to go. Still wasn't quite sure about what was happening here with the doors and the entranceway. So it looks a little iffy, those parts. And obviously the frame here and the name of the company floating out in the middle of nowhere also needed to be addressed. So, a lot of little things to consider. There's nothing holding the name up. So what do? There's, obviously that's backwards, but this is floating off of a, gas pump. So obviously that doesn't make any sense. There's little details in here, the poles, a video screen, which obviously ended up becoming more of a horizontal. These sides ended up becoming more evenly spaced. So the sizing changed a bit. So this wasn't so big, and this was a little bit larger for a larger video screen. Plus there was nothing up on top. So we took all these and, looked at whatever our measurement's going to be like. How can we split this up? Because the whole idea is the set itself is just going to be like movie flats. They have to be removable. It has to be modular. You have to be able to assemble and disassemble this at various events. Like I said, WonderCon, Comic-Con. And we had to kind of figure that out. It took some time, and that's mostly why the balance between both sides had changed, because the division between the walls, they didn't want a seam right in the middle here, so we hid the seam in behind the door, the doorway, the jamb itself. So this became a little bit of a blueprint per se, and then from there we just kind of drew out all the details that we needed to, and then figured out what was going to happen. There was going to be wood decking, like porch. This is, kind of follows a lot of the old styles from Louisiana. I mean, that was the theme, the feel for it, was it's a mix between this old Louisiana, storefront maybe, and then this more high-tech, more modern, metallic-looking facade that has mechanical cake on it. And that being their kind of moniker that they put on everything. So it is obviously Modville, things taking the old and modding them or modifying those and creating something, new. And that's basically what the set was supposed to look like. So we got also some plans for a desk, a display case that would be out front where they can sit down, the artist and owners and stuff like that. They could talk to people and sign autographs and hand out memorabilia and whatnot. So we had some ideas, what they wanted. Again, more brainstorming, just what is this going to look like? And again, they're very rough. So they're basically concept pieces. They don't deal with how they're going to be constructed. So all of that we had to figure out ourselves. So how this would be built, again, this wasn't going to be modular, but obviously the building would be. And we had to construct it in a way that we could move it. It's strong enough to withstand travel, setup, and anybody could assemble it, essentially. All they have to do is just kind of follow the directions. So with this, it was a solid piece, and it was a display case. And a few things changed, again, based on ideas from what we had with up here. So when some of this stuff had changed, some of the results of that, the materials and the look and feel of it, some of that started to translate back into this. So we would see the metal panels on the side of the Modville building show up down here in the desk or the display case. And that was basically it. So this is all we had to work with, was some measurements and what kind of materials that they wanted. Initially it was wood and some fabrics, various fabrics in there. And I think there was another screen or a monitor supposed to be in here, but turns out that wasn't going to work too well because it's too low to the ground. Nobody's going to see it. So we decided just to do the whole bottom just in metal. And you'll see that in a minute. So just all those ideas. And then we had some reference materials sent to us. And again, old Louisiana style buildings. This one is actually from Disneyland, but it had the post styles and the window styles that we were looking for, or that they were looking for. And so this actually became a pretty good reference. As far as colors, they wanted colors to include these turquoise and pale colors, light grays. Almost went with the dark greens, but started to get too too much of the dark colors. They wanted light color to contrast with the turquoise doors, the off-white casing around the doors and things like that. So just looking at color combinations, they went with, like I said, a gray and the off-white and the turquoise, rather than like this is like more of a peach color, with a lighter turquoise, almost just like a pale green. And then here's more of a blue style. But again, the doors are tall and skinny, have that arched look to it. This one didn't have that style, but they liked the color, so we matched the color there, and then went with this kind of style door, similar in a sense, but they wanted glass instead of louvers. So just a couple of reference shots that we used for that. So then started construction, started building it to scale. It was mainly very thin boards, just like furring strips, 1x3s, typical, construction materials for movie flats. And some of this, like in here, there was metal bracing for the overhanging text, the sign. So since they didn't have anything to hold up that sign, I had to design some steel braces with unistrut that would be really strong to hold up that sign across the top, because I didn't want it to fall over. And then basically these walls were held into the floorboards on a peg system. So they'd fit over the top of these big dowels, and then they would get mounted together, by various bolts in different areas, just to kind of reinforce the structure. But you can see pretty basic, it's near normal build out for kind of a movie set. Constructions for the doorway and the casing that would eventually become a little bit thicker and give it more dimension. The top pieces, the more high-tech style, we used a lot of thinner hardboard, just cutouts with patterns that would give us the various layers of kind of simulating metal rings or wraparound metal at the top. A lot of these, we just call them speed holes, but they're just holes drilled into the MDF because MDF is much heavier than plywood, so we try to lighten up the piece with drilling out some materials. And once you start removing materials, like you try to minimize the number that we use so that it wouldn't be so heavy when you moved it, because it's all being made out of natural wood, and obviously that's going to be heavy. So every way we could, we tried to minimize the weight. So here's the doors. They're a little bit wider than the reference material, but eventually these end up getting wrapped in a blue turquoise color and with glass, and then the bottoms just get closed in. So hinges were added on later and doorknobs and all that fun stuff, but the basic construction was pretty simple, just hardwood. Then we had the window. They wanted to, again, using the reference material from some Louisiana photos, we found some little crown molding that worked out perfectly, and just getting that to match up takes a little bit of time, but it did work out. For the entrance, turned out pretty good. Gave it some more dimension, more of that kind of style that they were looking for. Arched doorways, and here you can see the casing's much bigger with a little bit of extra trim to kind of finish it up. So this is basically the final version of that centerpiece. So when we divided up the set in 3 separate pieces, this being the centerpiece, 6 feet wide, then the other 2 sides, were 7 feet each. So that gave us our 20 feet. Here's one of the sides. And again, this being wider now because the big screen is going to fit on here horizontally instead of vertically. This one ended up being pretty heavy, actually, because of all the real wood that we used in it. Because the idea was also the fact that not only would it be an exhibitor booth, but they would use it on set, filming the movie, and they want it to look as real as possible. So trying to use as much real materials as I can, and doing all the fun stuff, clamping, gluing, drilling, stapling, nailing, you name it, just to get all the pieces together. Here were the beginnings of the top rails. So again, they're going to be metallic, so I had to create something to wrap the metal strips around so it wouldn't just collapse. But on the curved areas, obviously you need some more backing there. Here's the doors now in the doorway. So here's the window now constructed. And you can see again that style top piece, the edging that shows up, the profiles, the silhouettes are all going to be really strong because it is built to scale and it would look normal. So trying to fake that by just running flat boards and painting slats on there just wasn't going to cut it. People are going to be, hands-on right there interacting with it. It's not just going to be shot from a camera, 30 feet away. So we wanted everything to be as real as possible. Here's a portion of the top pieces. So you can see there's one over there and there's one over here. Here's the sign. And again, there's this wraparound that becomes metal eventually. And then neon wraps around the insets. So these ones, again, were heavier than expected. So again, more of these speed holes. We dropped the weight, made it lighter. We did holes in the letters themselves to lighten that up as well. Here's some of the metal panels that actually went on the side. And this is what they call the pillow metal. So going back to this style, I would say 50s, 60s style diner upper section, it would often have this kind of metal pillow style design in panels, like whether it's on the outside or it's on the inside. Very common. So again, that's being used on both ends. And these are like support sides. So it holds down the building from falling forward. And then we've got posts out front to do the same thing. So there was support backwards, forwards, left to right. And again, just to make it solid as possible and safe as possible, and yet still have something that you could move around and you could rebuild and construct, for each event. So here's a close-up of just where the pieces fit. Here's the floorboards. A little bit of blood stain there, and just aging and grunging up of the wood and making it look old, like old New Orleans. Then we did, so here's those panels here, as they hold up the side of the facade. And then here's the poles, the front poles sitting on a porch. So again, we've got support here, on the other side as well. There's also support here. So it was very stout, the building itself. There's an under panel here, which also got painted and kind of stylized with some damage and whatnot. You can see all the scars and damage to the paint here and along the windows, and all that stuff just aging and grunging it up. Here we go, kind of a mock-up day, getting the whole set built, make sure everything's fitting and everything looked right. Mechanical Cake did some interviews with some reporters. They talked a lot about their collaboration with Ridley Scott and the graphic novel and all that kind of stuff. So that was a fun day. And just some of my paint stuff there. But anyway, so that's where we ended up with. And then this is the display case. And what I did was I made cutouts in the back and then put doors back here so that they could drop in props without having to take the plexiglass face off and leave everything in position. They'd have storage at the bottom and then have access in the back to put any props that they need. They'd also have some space, like a shelf here and on the other side as well. So if they're, want to store their drinks or their keys or something like that during the event, then they had some space for that too. Here, just kind of bondoed the top of it because he changed his mind from wood to a more of a automotive finish. So they wanted it to be smooth and painted their standard green color. So now I had to then take the wood and create a smooth surface, and then so that required Bondo, drilling, mounting, Bondo, sanding, Bondo, all that kind of stuff, until it was completely smooth. So it's more like a fiberglass shell, even though it's made out of wood, but it'd be kind of similar to that. And then you can see that pillow metal again being wrapped around the base of it. Completely changed the look and feel of that rather than this wood desk. So it turned out pretty good. They really liked the final result. I painted the interior flat black so it wouldn't be a distraction. They ended up wrapping it partially with some specific cloth or fabric that they had. But yeah, they really liked the way it turned out. And I think it matched the set better than that wood style. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Here's their little, cupcake, mechanical cake guy. And he's actually sitting on the display case. So you can see the plexiglass on top. Can't really see what's in there, but there's the video screen on the wall, some of their graphic novels on the table. Here's another one. People interacting with some of their employees. Looks like, you can see where they had graffitied on the walls to have it more of this really old feel to it. So it has this more high-tech sense about it because of Mechanical Cake and who they are. That's kind of their branding. And then this old style building that they've kind of inhabited, let's say. So it's kind of a mix between taking the old stuff and modifying it with all of this, maybe different eras, but new stuff. So it worked out pretty well. And it was a good size display case. That turned out to be just the right size. So that's basically it. That's what we did. So you get a little closer look of the sign, the video screen on the wall. They had removed some of the graffiti eventually, dial it down a bit because I think it was too overwhelming. So they just wanted to make all of this fit together. So you can see it's just all the aging to the doors and old knobs, the lanterns and all that stuff with the graffiti, the wood plank deck. The old props that are in there. And this video just kind of displayed some of the graphic novel stuff and announcement about Modville. And here's the Modville Museum, a bunch of props that they're taken from what would appear in the movie or the novel or both, whatever they're doing. Some of the other props here, this little jet bike thing, really cool stuff. But yeah, turned out really well. Really proud of what we did, and we got voted People's Choice Award for Best Exhibit at WonderCon in 2025. So that's our story.